yourselves, and our country to regain our Founding Fathers' vision of a true republic. Tonight we have with us senatorial candidates, Mr. Peter Schiff and Mr. Vinny Forras. We'll start the evening off with some commentary from each of our candidates as an introduction, and then we'll move into forum questions, followed by questions from the audience. Mr. Schiff, could you go first?
Oh. Am I on now? Okay, all right, well, thanks everybody for coming. I guess we got the undercard tonight, but hopefully one day we'll break out the top of the tickets. But I'll just tell you a little bit about my background, and then I'll save the policies for the Q&As. But so I was born in Connecticut. My father was born in Connecticut, and my grandfather emigrated to Connecticut just over 100 years ago. So third generation here. I live in Weston, and I have a business that is based in Westport. I own a brokerage firm called Euro Pacific Capital, and I started the company maybe about 15 years ago. And as late as 2000, I was still a one-man company. And now, in the last decade, I've grown. I now have over 100 employees. I have 5 other offices, so 6 total. I have 15,000 more individual accounts, people like you. I do a lot of retail business. I also have a couple of mutual funds. I do asset management with a registered investment advisor, and I do investment banking. I've also authored a number of books. 4, the most recent, came out last week, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. And my first book came out in February of 2007 called Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse. And one of the things that's been the overwhelming or driving force behind the way I've run my investment firm is my advice is generally focused on macroeconomics and how government policies interfere with or inhibit economic growth, how they undermine the value of currencies and productivity. And as a result of that, I've been very reluctant to invest here. I've been very nervous about the policies emanating from Washington, from Congress, from the Federal Reserve that have undermined the value of our money, that have debased our currency, that have rendered our businesses less productive and less competitive. And as an investor and money manager, I've been trying to find ways to protect myself from Washington. But the problem is now the mistakes they're making are now so grave, and the consequences are so disastrous, not just for investors, but for all Americans, that as an American, I think it's important for me to take a break from what I'm doing and try to do something more important, which is to go to Washington and actually prevent Congress from making those mistakes in the first place, and trying to help recreate the environment that made us a wealthy, successful nation in the first place, because that environment no longer exists today. And it's clear to me that the people who are in Washington are clueless regarding their own culpability in the financial crisis and in the mess our economy is in. And I don't think politicians are going to solve these problems. I think the only problem they see is their own reelection. And the things that need to be done cannot be done if you're trying to get reelected, because a lot of what needs to be done isn't popular. It's certainly not going to be popular with the special interests, and it's not going to be popular with a lot of voters who are looking to get checks from the government. And we have to be willing to understand the root cause of our problems and the source of our problems, and to do something about it, not just talk about it and kick the can down the road and try to postpone the consequences until after the next election. So that's who I am and why I'm running, and I'll talk more as we get these questions.
You said that the need for bipartisan compromise and the influence of lobbyist culture corrupts even the most honest soul once they step foot in D.C. How would you maintain your resolve to discern the difference between political necessity and unacceptable legislation?
Well, a lot of people think that the goal is compromise, that we need bipartisanship, that we need to cooperate. And I don't think so. I think that's why we're in this mess. I think people have compromised their principles for too long for political expediency. And I want to put an end to that. I said, gridlock is fine with me if that's the only thing that stands between us and more government. But at this point, we need more than just that. I mean, we need to really turn back the clock, roll back the tide. We've got to repeal a lot of the rules and the regulations that have been written over the years that have encumbered our markets and our economy and have created the problems that led to the financial crisis of 2008. We need to dramatically reduce the size of government. We need to shrink government. We need to abolish departments and agencies and slash spending across the board. And if we can cut spending enough, then we can finally lower taxes. And none of this is going to happen if we simply compromise. I mean, we've got, runaway deficits right now. We've got a budget deficit of $1.5 trillion. Social Security is running in the red. The Congress is going to want to try to attack this. They just appointed a bipartisan committee. I know the committee is going to come out and the recommendations are going to be we need some spending cuts and some tax increases. We don't need that. We can't do that compromise. We can't raise taxes and give the government more money to spend because they'll spend it and then some. We have to draw the line on tax increases and force the spending cuts. And it means, standing up for what's right and trying to win the ideological battle, getting the other side to accept our principles, and if not, fighting for them and trying to make sure that they don't get reelected until we have the critical mass that we need to get this done.
Countries depend largely on foreign oil. Yet many of these countries fuel anti-American terrorists with our money. Despite our own rich natural resources, the federal government has claimed ownership of much state land and denied access to developing these natural resources. What is your approach to addressing these related issues?
The way the government solves the problem is they create more government. We had the oil shock in the 1970s, and of course, the reason that oil prices went up in the 1970s was because we debased the value of our money. We went off the gold standard in 1971. The dollar collapsed. It dropped by 70%. The Swiss franc went from 23 cents to 75 cents. It went from getting 300 and something yen to the dollar to 150. And so gold went from $35 an ounce to $800, and oil went from $3 a barrel to $30 a barrel. Well, what was the government's solution? The government's solution was to create the Department of Energy. Fantastic, right? The Department of Energy was implemented to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. Well, when they started the Department of Energy, we imported less than 40% of our oil. Now we import more than 70% of our oil. Right? What has that accomplished? Absolutely nothing. It's created a lot of jobs for a lot of bureaucrats, and they waste $30 billion of our tax dollars every year. First thing we can do is abolish the Department of Energy. And the main reason that we don't develop our natural resources in this country, whether it's oil and gas or other minerals or even labor. We have a lot of unemployed people in this country. Why aren't they working? It's because government rules and regulations prevent them from working. It is cheaper for us to import oil than to develop our own reserves because the government makes it so expensive with all the rules, all the regulations, and all the taxes. That needs to end. We need to free up our capital and deregulate the economy so that we can develop our resources domestically instead of borrowing money from the Chinese to import oil from the Saudis. It makes no sense. We're going into debt and bringing our country deeper into bankruptcy, yet we're leaving resources unexploited. And we have to open up more land to exploration. I mean, look at what's going on up in Alaska. You have people in Alaska want to drill up there, and the federal government says you can't. I mean, why? I mean, the people that live there, they don't mind, but how many Americans actually go up there? And, they're talking about the fact that, well, there might be some caribou or some species that might be inconvenienced. And the truth is, from what I can tell, they like the pipelines going through there. I mean, it's warm. It's like the best place if you're a cowboy. Where you go, you want to go by that pipeline. That's where you go to have your babies. And so, I think it's ridiculous. To let sometimes some of the inconsequential concerns of a few radical environmentalists, prevent the country from developing its natural resources.